There are prayers that shake the very foundations of the earth, and there are prayers that barely stir the wind. Some prayers are whispers lost in the noise of the world, while others rise like thunder to touch the very heart of heaven. The way you pray holds power, power to move mountains, power to shift the course of destiny, power to break chains that have bound your soul for generations. Prayer is not just words spoken into the air. It is the echo of faith, the language of surrender, the force that bridges the seen and the unseen. And yet not all prayers are the same. Some knock on heaven's gates and return empty, while others burst forth with divine authority. What makes the difference? Why do some prayers shake the heavens while others barely rise above a whisper? There is power in the way you pray. A woman sat in a dimly lit room, hands clasped tight, her heart heavy with burdens too great for her shoulders. She whispered words into the silence, words that had become a ritual, a habit formed by years of need. But the walls did not shake, the ground did not tremble, and heaven seemed silent. She wept, not because she did not believe, but because she feared her prayers were not enough. Some know this feeling well. They have cried out, begged, pleaded, yet the answers have not come. They have spoken the words, but the power they seek has not revealed itself. And so the doubt creeps in. Does heaven listen? Does prayer change anything at all? But prayer is not a matter of volume or eloquence. It is not found in rehearsed phrases or poetic verses. True prayer is a force, a fire, a cry that rises not from the lips alone, but from the depths of the soul. It is not a mere request. It is an unshakable declaration of trust. It is the difference between a seed casually thrown to the wind and a seed planted with care, watered with faith, and nurtured with expectation. There is power in the way you pray. When the desperate mother kneels by her child's bedside, her voice trembling with both fear and faith, her prayer is not empty. When the man who has lost everything raises his hands not in despair but in surrender, his prayer is not ignored. When the one who has been beaten down by life still whispers, "Not my will but yours," that prayer does not return void. It rises like incense, thick with hope, fragrant with trust. It is heard. But prayer must be more than words. It must be a posture, a stance, a way of life. There are those who pray from a place of doubt, their words hesitant, their hearts unsure. And there are those who pray from a place of certainty, knowing that though the answer may not come in the way they expect, it will come. This is the prayer that moves the hand of the divine. This is the prayer that shifts realities. There was once a man who stood before an army far greater than his own. He did not have weapons, he did not have strength in numbers, but he had something else. He had a prayer that did not waver. He lifted his hands not to beg, but to declare. His prayer was not a plea, it was an expectation. And the battle that should have ended in defeat was turned into victory. Not because his words were different, but because the way he prayed carried the weight of belief. When you pray, do you believe? Do you speak with the certainty of one who knows they are heard? Or do you pray as if you are tossing words into an empty sky, hoping that by chance something will change? The way you pray determines the way the heavens respond. When faith fuels your words, when trust shapes your cries, the very atmosphere around you begins to shift. The chains that once held you start to weaken. The barriers that once blocked you begin to crumble. The prayer of a righteous soul is not a weak thing. It is not passive. It is not timid. It is a force that stands before the impossible and calls forth the miraculous. It is a voice that speaks to the storm and commands it to be still. It is a fire that cannot be extinguished, a light that cannot be dimmed. It is the difference between a locked door and an open one, between a wall that stands tall and a mountain that is cast into the sea. There is power in the way you pray. When you pray with gratitude, the doors of abundance swing wide. When you pray with surrender, peace rushes in like a river. When you pray with expectation, the impossible becomes possible. But when you pray with doubt, when you pray with fear, your words become like empty shells, lacking the force to break through the barriers before you. A child does not ask their parent for bread and wonder if they will receive a stone. A child does not reach for their mother's hand and question if they will be held. They ask and they expect, they reach and they receive. This is the heart of true prayer. It is not hesitant, it is not unsure, it is bold, it is unshaken. It is the confidence of one who knows they are loved, one who knows they are seen, one who knows they are heard. There are prayers that have stopped wars, prayers that have healed the sick, prayers that have freed the captive, prayers that have broken the grip of generational curses, not because they were long, not because they were loud, but because they were prayed with power, because they came from a place of unwavering belief. If you have prayed and seen no change, look not at the words you speak, but at the heart behind them. Do you believe when you pray? Do you trust even before the answer comes? The way you pray matters. It shapes your reality. It shifts your destiny. It calls forth things that do not yet exist and brings them into being. Do not pray as one who is uncertain. Do not whisper your desires into the night, unsure if they will ever be heard. Pray as one who knows. Pray as one who understands the power that rests in the very act of surrender. Pray as one who has already received. And when you do, watch as the earth moves beneath your feet. Watch as the heavens lean in to listen. Watch as the impossible bows before the power of faith. A man once stood at the edge of his breaking point, hands gripping the remnants of his faith. He had prayed before. Oh, how he had prayed. He had wept, pleaded, even bargained with heaven. Yet the silence remained unbroken, and the weight of his unanswered prayers threatened to crush the last fragments of his hope. But something in him would not let go. Something in him refused to believe that his words were lost in the void. So he changed the way he prayed. No longer did he speak from desperation alone. He spoke from declaration. No longer did he cry out as if he were forgotten. He spoke as one who knew he was heard. And the moment his prayer shifted, the heavens answered. There is power in the way you pray. It is not in the length of the words, nor in the beauty of their arrangement. It is in the authority with which they are spoken. A soldier does not whisper a command and hope his army follows. A captain does not question whether the sea will obey the rudder of his ship, yet so many come before heaven uncertain, unsure, as if their words hold no weight. But prayer is not a suggestion, it is a force. It is the bridge between the mortal and the divine, the link between the seen and the unseen, the language of the soul that dares to believe against all odds. Some prayers shake the very foundation of darkness. Some prayers do not merely request change, they demand it. Some prayers step into the courtroom of heaven and state their case with such conviction that even the unseen must bow. These are the prayers of those who refuse to accept anything less than the fullness of what is promised. These are the prayers of those who understand that they do not beg before a distant throne, but stand as heirs to a kingdom that is already theirs. There is a difference between asking and claiming. There is a difference between hoping and knowing. The one who asks may doubt the answer. The one who claims does not question if it will come. The one who hopes still wonders when. The one who knows walks forward as if it has already been done. And heaven moves in response to those who pray from a place of certainty. A woman once prayed for healing. She spoke the words daily, asking, waiting, yearning. But her heart was filled with more fear than faith, more uncertainty than trust. She hoped for an answer, but she did not expect it. And so nothing changed. Until one day she stood before the mirror, and instead of asking, she declared. Instead of whispering, she proclaimed. She spoke not as one who was waiting, but as one who had already received. And in that moment, the weight lifted, the chains broke. The healing she had longed for was suddenly, miraculously hers, not because she had spoken different words, but because the way she prayed had changed. Faith does not whisper in the dark. It speaks into existence what the eyes cannot yet see. It does not bow before circumstances. It commands circumstances to bow before it. The one who prays with true faith does not ask the mountain to move. They tell it where to go. They do not hope the storm will pass. They command it to be still. They do not question if the door will open. They walk forward as if it already has. But prayer is not only about speaking, it is about listening. The most powerful prayers are those that are birthed from a place of alignment. Many cry out for answers, but few are still enough to receive them. Many speak, but few listen. Prayer is not a monologue, it is a conversation. It is not only the sound of your voice rising to heaven, it is the whisper of heaven rising within you. And those who understand this do not pray with mere words alone, they pray with the fullness of their being. There is power in the way you pray. If your prayers are rooted in fear, they will not bear the fruit of faith. If your prayers are spoken with doubt, they will not birth certainty. But if your prayers are fueled by unshakable trust, if they are spoken with the authority of one who knows they are heard, then they will not return empty. They will not dissolve into nothingness. They will not remain unanswered. A warrior does not go into battle unsure if their weapon will work. A leader does not give orders uncertain if they will be followed. And yet too many pray as if they are unsure of the power behind their words. Too many speak without conviction, hoping their words might reach the heavens rather than knowing they already have. But those who pray with power, those who pray as if they know the heavens are already moving, those are the ones who see miracles unfold before their very eyes. A young boy once stood in the middle of a dry and barren land, his people suffering under the weight of a relentless drought. They had prayed for rain year after year, but the skies had remained empty. And so when he stood with arms raised, the elders scoffed. They had spoken those same prayers before. They had pleaded, they had wept, they had waited. But the boy did not pray as they had. He did not ask timidly. He did not whisper in uncertainty. He lifted his voice with expectation, and then, as if the heavens had been waiting for someone to believe, the clouds began to gather, the wind began to shift, and the first drops of rain fell upon the parched earth. What changed? The words were the same. The need was the same. The drought had not lessened, the skies had not softened, but the way the boy prayed carried a power that the others had not. It was not just a request, it was an expectation. It was not just a plea, it was a declaration. And when heaven heard the voice of one who did not just hope but believed, the answer was released. This is the power of prayer that moves mountains. This is the force that commands the impossible to become reality. This is the kind of prayer that shifts the tides of history. It is not passive. It does not sit in waiting. It does not cower in the face of delay. It stands, it declares, it commands, it believes. If your prayers have not yet been answered, do not stop praying. Change the way you pray. Do not lower your voice. Raise your expectation. Do not shrink in doubt. Rise in faith. Do not whisper in uncertainty. Declare with authority. Speak not as one who is unsure, but as one who knows. Know that your words carry weight. Know that your voice is heard. Know that your prayer is not just sound, it is power. There is power in the way you pray. Power to open doors that were once sealed shut. Power to break chains that have held you for too long. Power to shift the very course of your life. Speak as one who is certain. Pray as one who believes. And then watch as heaven moves in response. A woman once sat by her window, staring out at a world that seemed unmovable, unchanging. She had prayed for years, lifting up the same requests, whispering the same words into the air, yet nothing had shifted, nothing had broken, nothing had moved. And so she wondered if her prayers had been nothing more than echoes in an empty sky. But then something stirred within her, a small yet undeniable truth that had been buried under years of waiting. It was not that heaven had been deaf to her cries. It was that she had been speaking without power. Her prayers had been wrapped in doubt, colored with hesitation, shaped by fear. She had asked, but she had not expected. She had spoken, but she had not commanded. And so she decided to pray differently. She stood, lifted her hands, and instead of pleading, she declared. Instead of wondering if her prayers were heard, she spoke as if she already had her answer. And in that moment, the air around her shifted. The chains that had bound her spirit loosened. The doors that had been locked for so long began to tremble. There are prayers that touch the surface, and then there are prayers that reach into the depths of heaven. There are prayers that rest on the lips, and then there are prayers that rise from the soul. The power of prayer is not found in the repetition of words, nor in the beauty of speech. It is found in the faith that fuels it. A person may pray for years and see nothing if their heart is filled with hesitation, but the one who prays with boldness, with certainty, with the kind of faith that refuses to accept defeat, will see the very foundations of their world shift. Prayer is not merely a request, it is an act of authority. It is not a weak cry, it is a force that commands, a power that disrupts, a fire that consumes anything that stands in the way of divine purpose. A man once found himself standing at the threshold of the impossible. He had done all he could. He had spoken all he knew to speak. He had waited longer than he thought he could bear. The doors before him remained shut, and the voices around him told him to give up, to accept the reality of failure. But something within him would not let go. And so he fell to his knees, not in defeat, but in power. His words were not laced with desperation, nor were they filled with uncertainty. He did not beg, he proclaimed. He did not whisper in doubt, he declared in faith. And as he prayed, as he spoke with the full weight of his belief, something in the atmosphere began to shift. The barriers before him cracked. The doors that had been sealed for years trembled on their hinges, and before long, what had once been impossible became his reality. Prayer is not a passive act. It is not an uncertain hope tossed into the unknown. It is a weapon, a shield, a key that unlocks what once seemed inaccessible. When spoken with power, prayer becomes the force that dismantles obstacles, the voice that commands darkness to flee, the breath that fills dry bones and brings them back to life. But too many have forgotten the weight of their words. Too many have allowed doubt to water down their prayers, to strip them of the fire they were meant to carry, and so they pray as though they are unsure. They ask as if they do not truly believe. They speak, but their words lack the authority that shifts the heavens. A farmer does not plant a seed and wonder if it will grow. He does not stand over his field, questioning whether the soil will do its work. He plants and he expects. He waters and he believes. And in time, what was once buried begins to break through the earth, stretching toward the sky. This is the posture of true prayer. It is not a wavering hope. It is a firm expectation. It is not a fearful request. It is a bold declaration. When a person prays with this kind of faith, they do not wonder if things will change. They know they will. They do not question if their answer will come. They walk as if it is already done. And in response, heaven moves. A woman once found herself facing a battle that seemed far too great for her. She had no resources, no allies, no way forward. And yet she did not allow her circumstances to dictate her faith. She knelt, lifted her voice, and prayed, not as one who was defeated, but as one who knew victory was already hers. She did not ask timidly, she declared boldly. She did not beg, she proclaimed. And before long, what should have been an impossible battle turned in her favor. Doors opened where there had been none. Provisions arrived where there had been lack. The very forces that had stood against her crumbled before the weight of her unwavering prayer. The way you pray matters. The posture of your faith determines the movement of your prayers. If you pray with uncertainty, your words will carry little weight. If you pray with doubt, the heavens will not be moved. But if you pray as one who knows, as one who believes, as one who speaks with the authority given to them, then nothing can stand against the force of your faith. Mountains will move, chains will break, the impossible will bow before the sound of your voice. A child does not hesitate when they call upon their parent. They do not wonder if they will be heard. They do not question if their needs will be met. They simply ask and they trust. And yet so many approach prayer with hesitation, with uncertainty, with fear that perhaps their voice does not matter. But the heavens do not respond to timidity. They respond to faith. They respond to the boldness of one who speaks with conviction. They respond to the one who does not merely ask, but expects. There are prayers that have changed the course of history, prayers that have stopped wars, healed the sick, raised the dead, prayers that have torn down strongholds and built up new foundations, not because they were spoken by the most righteous, nor because they were crafted with poetic beauty, but because they were spoken with power, because they were fueled by faith, because they were not merely spoken into the air, but declared with authority. If the mountains in your life have not moved, if the chains around you have not broken, if the doors before you remain closed, do not stop praying. Shift the way you pray. Speak not as one who is unsure, but as one who knows. Declare, do not doubt. Command, do not question. Pray as one who has already received, not as one who is still waiting. For when you do, you will see the heavens respond. You will see the impossible bow. You will see the very atmosphere around you begin to shift. A man once stood on the edge of his breakthrough, but he did not know it. He had prayed for years, spoken the words, done all he knew to do, but nothing had changed. And so he prepared to walk away, believing that perhaps his prayers had been in vain. But then in a final moment of surrender, he prayed differently. He did not beg, he proclaimed. He did not whisper in uncertainty, he declared in faith. And in that moment, the very thing he had been waiting for unfolded before his eyes, not because the answer had just arrived, but because he had finally prayed with the power to receive it. This is the power of prayer that shifts realities. This is the force that opens doors, that breaks chains, that calls forth miracles. It is not in the length of words, nor in the eloquence of speech. It is in the belief behind them. It is in the certainty that fuels them. It is in the authority with which they are spoken. And so when you pray, pray with fire, pray with certainty, pray as one who knows their words hold weight. Speak, not as one who hopes, but as one who declares. And when you do, watch as the heavens move, watch as the earth trembles, watch as the impossible bows before the power of your voice. A man once found himself in the middle of a storm, the kind that rattled the bones, the kind that made the sky groan under the weight of its own fury. He had been in storms before, had weathered the wind, had braced against the rain, had held his breath as lightning slashed through the heavens. But this time was different. This time he was not just fighting against the storm outside, he was fighting against the storm within. He had prayed before countless times, whispered his pleas into the night, let his words drift into the silence. But now, standing there with the wind howling around him, he realized something. He had been speaking as though he were powerless. He had been praying as if he were a beggar. And so he lifted his face to the sky, planted his feet on the trembling earth, and spoke, not in fear, not in desperation, but in authority. He did not ask the storm to quiet itself. He commanded it. He did not question whether his voice held power. He knew that it did. And in that moment, the wind began to shift. The rain began to soften. The thunder began to retreat. Not because the storm had simply passed, but because he had spoken with a kind of faith that does not bow. There are those who pray with uncertainty, and then there are those who pray with conviction. There are those who hope, and there are those who know. And heaven does not respond to the hesitant heart. It responds to the one who speaks as if they are already victorious. Too many approach prayer as if they are pleading for scraps, as if they must convince heaven to hear them, as if they are not already known, already seen, already positioned for favor. But the moment you begin to pray with the understanding that your words are not empty, that your voice carries the weight of divine power, everything shifts. A woman once cried out in the middle of her suffering, her hands trembling, her heart weary. She had been waiting for an answer, waiting for relief, waiting for the heavy hand of her burdens to lift. But no matter how many times she spoke, the silence remained until one day she changed the way she prayed. She no longer spoke as though she were reaching toward something distant. She spoke as if she had already received. She no longer hoped, she believed. And with that shift, her circumstances began to change. Doors that had remained closed for years suddenly swung open. Chains that had held her back crumbled. The weight she had carried for so long lifted, not because she had spoken new words, but because she had spoken them with new power. A seed does not question whether it will grow. A flame does not hesitate before it burns. The sun does not rise with uncertainty, wondering if the sky will receive it. And yet so many speak words of prayer as if they are unsure if their voice has weight, as if they must fight to be heard, as if their prayer was nothing more than whispers in the wind. But prayer was never meant to be timid. Prayer was never meant to be unsure. Prayer was meant to be a declaration, a force, a key that unlocks what was once hidden. A child does not approach their father with fear, wondering if they will be turned away. A child knows that when they speak, they will be heard. A child knows that they do not have to beg for what is already theirs. And yet too many approach prayer as if they are outsiders, as if they must convince heaven to listen, as if they are not already heirs to divine favor. But the moment you pray with the confidence of a child who knows they are loved, the moment you speak with the authority of one who knows they are heard, the heavens begin to shift. There is a sound that shakes the foundation of darkness. It is not the sound of doubt. It is not the sound of fear. It is the sound of a voice that speaks with authority, that declares with boldness, that refuses to be silenced. It is the sound of one who does not ask if mountains will move, but commands them to do so. It is the sound of one who does not plead for change, but enforces it. And when such a voice rises, all that stands against it begins to tremble. A man once stood at the edge of a battle, looking at an enemy that far outnumbered him, a force that should have crushed him under its weight. And those around him told him to retreat, to surrender, to accept defeat. But he did not listen to their fear, for he understood something they did not. He knew that the battle had already been won, not because of what he could see, but because of what he believed. And so he lifted his voice, not in fear, but in faith. He did not ask for victory, he declared it. He did not beg for favor, he stood in it. And as his words rose into the heavens, the battle began to turn in his favor. Not because the enemy had grown weaker, but because his prayer had shifted the atmosphere. A woman once found herself standing before a door that would not open, knocking with all the strength she had left, waiting for an answer that never seemed to come. But as time passed, as her hands grew weary, she began to wonder if she was knocking the wrong way. And so she stopped asking timidly. She stopped waiting in uncertainty. Instead, she commanded the door to open. Instead, she spoke as one who knew it was already heard. And in that instant, the lock broke, the barriers fell, and what had once been shut before her swung wide. If the walls before you have not yet crumbled, if the chains around you have not yet been broken, if the prayers you have spoken have not yet manifested, do not give up. Change the way you pray. Do not lower your voice. Raise your expectation. Do not speak in fear. Declare in faith. Do not wonder if your words have power. Know that they do. For the heavens do not move in response to uncertainty. They move in response to faith. A man once sat in the silence of his own struggle, waiting, longing, yearning for something to change. He had prayed before, had spoken the words, had done all he knew to do, but nothing had shifted. And so he nearly gave up. But then he remembered something. He remembered that he was not meant to pray as one who was unsure. He was not meant to speak as one who hoped. He was meant to speak as one who knew. And so he prayed again, not as a beggar, but as an heir, not as one who was pleading, but as one who was declaring. And in that moment, everything changed. This is the kind of prayer that moves mountains. This is the kind of prayer that breaks chains, that opens doors, that commands the impossible to become reality. It is not weak. It is not hesitant. It does not bow before circumstances. It does not cower in the face of delay. It stands, it declares, it believes, it enforces. And so when you pray, do not whisper in doubt. Speak with authority. Do not ask as if you are unsure. Declare as one who knows. Pray as one who has already received, not as one who is still waiting. And when you do, watch as the heavens move. Watch as the earth trembles. Watch as the impossible bows before the power of your voice. When you pray, pray with the understanding that your words hold power. Do not approach prayer as a last resort, a desperate cry in the darkness. Approach it as a force that commands, a voice that shapes reality. The heavens do not respond to doubt. They respond to faith. They do not move for the hesitant heart, but for the one who speaks with certainty. If mountains have not moved, if doors have not opened, if chains have not broken, do not lower your expectations. Raise your voice. Speak not as one who is unsure, but as one who knows. Declare, do not beg. Command, do not question. Stand in the authority given to you and watch as the impossible bows. For the power is not just in the words you speak. It is in the belief that fuels them. Pray as one who already holds the victory, and you will see the heavens move in your favor.